I was still shaking when two cops knocked on my door, flashing badges and handcuffs. "You're under arrest." My stomach dropped. "Arrested for what?" I stumbled back, hands trembling, when Sandra, my quiet wife who spent nights in pajamas watching baking shows, stepped forward. Her eyes were cold, her voice commanding, "Step away from my husband." I didn't even recognize her. One officer grabbed my arm. Then everything blurred, thuds, shouts, silence. When I looked up, the woman standing in my doorway wasn't the woman I married. She was someone else. Someone dangerous. The story didn't start with fake cops or midnight surveillance. It started with a simple deck. My gift to Sandra for our 12th anniversary. $8,000 worth of cedar wood, polished rails, and clean lines built exactly to HOA specifications, or at least, that's what I believed. I hired Michael Carter, the most recommended contractor in Maple Ridge. Everyone vouched for him, neighbors, friends, even Teresa Edwards, our HOA president. 3 weeks later, Michael had built what I thought would be our little paradise. Smooth planks that glowed in the sun, wide enough for cookouts, perfect for coffee in the mornings. Sandra came home from work that Friday night. She dropped her briefcase, slipped off her shoes, and stepped barefoot onto the deck. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Josh, this is really something." For a moment, everything felt perfect. Neighbors crowded over that weekend. Patricia Wilson brought her famous potato salad. The Johnsons from across the street, who never showed up for anything, came to admire the craftsmanship. Compliments poured in. People laughed. Plates filled, drinks clinked, but not Sandra. She smiled at the right moments, nodded when people praised the deck. Yet her fingers never stopped tapping across her phone screen, almost like she was conducting an orchestra only she could hear. I brushed it off as work stress. After all, Sandra processed Social Security claims. Boring, endless government paperwork. Monday morning, a letter from the HOA shattered everything. Violation notice. Your deck exceeds maximum height by 6 inches. $200 per day fine, effective immediately. I read it 3 times. 6 inches? Impossible. Michael had measured everything twice. He'd shown me blueprints. Teresa herself had signed off on the preliminary plans. When I called Michael, he sounded just as shocked. "Josh, that's impossible. I built to exact specs. I'll come by with the paperwork." But Sandra's reaction chilled me. She barely looked up from her laptop. "Just tear it down and rebuild," she said flatly, like we were choosing takeout. Tear it down? 3 weeks of construction. $8,000. All for 6 inches. The woman who once fought the HOA for months over the color of our mailbox suddenly wanted to surrender without a fight. That was the first sign something wasn't right. Later that afternoon, Patricia Wilson caught me outside. She leaned over the fence, her voice barely above a whisper. "3 families," she said. 3 families built additions, all hired Michael. They got notices too, and then they left Maple Ridge. She patted my arm and shuffled back inside before I could ask more. 3 families? All tied to Michael Carter? That couldn't be a coincidence. That night, Sandra worked late again, hunched over papers spread across our dining table. But when I looked closer, they weren't Social Security forms. They were surveillance photos, timestamps, notes about financial transfers. And just when I was about to ask questions, she swept them into her briefcase like they didn't exist. At 2:00 a.m., I woke to find her car gone. Purse gone. Bedroom door wide open. I watched from the window as our BMW's taillights disappeared down Maple Ridge Drive, 12 years of marriage. And suddenly my wife was sneaking out in the middle of the night. By the time she slipped back into bed at 4:30, I pretended to be asleep. She smelled of coffee and a floral perfume I didn't recognize. Michael came the next morning, blueprints and tape measure in hand. He checked the deck 3 times. Every measurement came back the same, 36 inches. Legal maximum was 38. Teresa's notice claimed it was 30. She's lying, I said. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Josh, Teresa lost her husband in a construction accident. She's overprotective about codes. Maybe it's just a mistake. But I remembered Patricia's warning. The 3 families, the suspicious finds, and Sandra's cold, detached response. Something was very wrong in Maple Ridge, and my wife was at the center of it. At first, the deck was more than wood. It was a promise. A symbol of 12 years of marriage, of surprises and effort. I wanted Sandra to feel loved, grounded, happy. And for a little while, I thought I had succeeded. But beneath the laughter of neighbors and the clinking of barbecue plates, cracks were already forming. Sandra was different. It wasn't just the way she stayed glued to her phone. It was her eyes, sharper, watchful, as though she was waiting for something none of us could see. She smiled when spoken to, but her attention was elsewhere. Like she wasn't at the party at all. I brushed it off. Maybe she was stressed from work. Maybe she was texting her sister. Maybe I was just imagining things. But what I found in Sandra's car would change everything I thought I knew about my wife. Because the truth wasn't just about a deck. It was about betrayal, blackmail, and a neighborhood conspiracy. And the next discovery nearly cost me my life. The moment Michael's tape measure confirmed Teresa's notice was a lie, the deck stopped being wood and nails. It became a weapon, a trap, a setup. And I couldn't tell if my wife was the one building it. For days, I tried to convince myself Sandra was just stressed, overworked. But the signs multiplied. Every late-night meeting, every guarded expression, every secret phone call felt like another crack in the foundation of our marriage. I wanted to ask her directly, to demand answers, but I was afraid of the answer I'd get. Instead, I started looking for proof. The first discovery was small. Mileage on her BMW, 300 miles more than last week. Our whole town is barely 15 miles across. Where had she been going? The second discovery cut deeper. Credit card charges at coffee shops in cities 50 miles away. Gas stations off highways we never used. Even receipts tucked into her console from hotels she'd never told me about. And then, something I couldn't ignore. A purchase from a surveillance equipment store. Sandra processed disability claims. Why would she need surveillance gear? One night, after she locked herself in the home office, I sat in the garage surrounded by her receipts, statements, and notes. My heart hammered as I pieced it together. She wasn't stressed from work. She was hiding something. Living a second life, and the worst part? She'd been doing it for months. The woman I'd trusted for 12 years, the woman who said just tear it down like it was nothing, was either lying to me or helping destroy me. That thought kept me awake until dawn. So the next night, when Sandra slipped out at 2 a.m., I followed. She drove without headlights until she hit Route 7. I tailed her 3 cars back. Headlights dimmed, praying she wouldn't spot me. She pulled into the empty lot of a dark office building and just sat there, engine running. Minutes later, a silver car arrived. A man in a suit stepped out, gray hair, polished shoes, even at this hour. They spoke through rolled-down windows too quiet for me to hear. Then a third car pulled up. A younger woman climbed out, sobbing uncontrollably. Sandra left her BMW, walked over, and started comforting her like a counselor. She handed tissues, took notes, patted her shoulder. This wasn't an affair, but it wasn't normal either. Why would a government clerk meet strangers in parking lots at 2 in the morning? Why was she writing in a notebook like she was building a case file? Nothing made sense anymore. The following morning, I tried to catch Sandra in a lie. "What time did you get home last night?" I asked casually. She froze mid-pour, coffee streaming over the rim of her mug. Then, calm as ice, she said, "I didn't go anywhere. You must have been dreaming, gaslighting." My wife was actually gaslighting me. I laughed it off, pretended to believe her, but inside I was breaking. Then came the email. Michael showed up at my door looking pale. He'd received a message from what looked like Sandra's government email. Proceed with original deck specifications. Bonus applies upon violation notice. TR. Teresa Richards? Teresa Edwards? Either way, it was proof my wife had set me up. She told me to build your deck to exact specs, Michael confessed. Then Teresa files a violation, I get my cut, Sandra gets hers. Clean profit. Josh, I think your wife's been setting people up, including you. I wanted to deny it, but the evidence was crushing me. Multiple identities, surveillance gear, secret payments. Was Sandra my wife or a criminal mastermind? That night I searched her car and found something that made my blood run cold. 6 business cards, each with a different name, a different title, and Sandra's face. Insurance investigator, legal consultant, property assessor. Every card looked legitimate, worn, used. Who was this woman living in my house? When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Instead, her eyes burned with anger. You went through my car. You've been lying to me for months, I shouted. Who are you, Sandra? What is this? Her jaw tightened. You're supposed to trust me. Trust her? After lies, secrecy, and evidence of scams? We stood there, a canyon of suspicion between us, neither willing to back down. That's when Teresa showed up at my door. Sweet, sympathetic Teresa, I heard shouting. Is everything okay? She asked, eyes too eager. Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone. Screenshots, texts between her and Sandra, planning violations, splitting profits, targeting families. It was all there, black and white. Sandra wasn't just lying. She was orchestrating this with Teresa. She blackmailed me, Teresa whispered, tears in her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. I almost believed her. Almost. But something in her smile didn't match the tears. Sandra left that night claiming she needed space. Separation, she called it, but the truth? She was slipping further and further away from me, days blurred into paranoia. I installed hidden cameras in the house. If Sandra was running a scam with Teresa and Michael, I'd catch her, and the footage confirmed my worst fears. Sandra came home at lunch, photographing the deck from every angle, measuring with a laser tool, documenting like a professional inspector. She climbed onto the roof, taking aerial shots. This wasn't random. It was methodical, purposeful, professional. The evidence was undeniable. My wife wasn't working against Teresa. She was working with her, or so I thought, because the deeper I dug, the more dangerous everything became. Michael invited me to his office late one night. Said he had proof Sandra had threatened him, broken into his van. When I arrived, the place looked staged, too clean, too prepared. He showed me grainy footage of someone in Sandra's jacket. Clearly fake. When I called him on it, his mask slipped. You're smarter than I thought, he said, pulling a gun from his desk. But it doesn't matter. Teresa and I have been partners for years. You were supposed to be number 7. Now you're just another casualty. My blood turned to ice. Michael planned to kill me, frame me, and walk away with profit. And if Sandra was in on it, then I'd been married to my executioner all along. But the truth about Sandra didn't hit me until the night. I saw her fight off too. Fake cops like a trained assassin. Because the woman I thought was betraying me was hiding a secret. Identity even I couldn't imagine. And what happened next would flip. Everything I believed about love, loyalty, and survival upside down. Michael's gun never wavered from my chest. His smile was thin, rehearsed. You were supposed to be just another victim, Josh. Teresa and I had it all planned. A quick shooting, tragic husband loses his mind over an HOA fine. Self-defense, clean, easy. You should have kept your mouth shut. My knees threatened to give out. My life, my marriage, my sanity had unraveled into this single moment. Then came the knock. Police! Open up! Heavy boots on the porch! Real authority in their voices. For one insane second I thought I was saved, but then I looked through the peephole. The uniforms were crisp, too crisp. The badges too shiny, like they'd come from a Halloween store. And then I heard her voice. Sandra's voice. "Police! We have a warrant for Joshua Roberts." I froze. My wife was on the other side of that door, flanked by two men pretending to be cops. Michael's grin widened. Perfect timing. He ordered me to let them in. I hesitated, but his gun pressed harder into my ribs. When I opened the door, the two fake officers stormed inside. One grabbed from my arm. The other laughed like this was all some sick joke, and then Sandra appeared behind them. But this wasn't the Sandra I knew, the one who wore pajamas and watched baking shows. This Sandra's voice cut through the room like steel. "Gentlemen, step aside," the shorter cop chuckled, reaching for her wrist. Big mistake. In 3 seconds flat, Sandra twisted, ducked, and dropped him face first onto Michael's hardwood floor. His badge skittered across the room like a coin. The second one bolted for the street, vanishing into the night. Michael panicked, reaching for his desk drawer. But Sandra's kick slammed it shut on his fingers. "Recording everything," she said, pointing to her phone mounted on the railing, "including you pulling a gun on my husband." For the first time in days, I felt air rush into my lungs. Moments later, flashing lights painted the room red and blue. Real squad cars this time, real cops, and in the middle of them a silver sedan rolled up. Out stepped a man in a tailored suit, calm and commanding. "David Walker, attorney," he introduced himself, "representing 6 families defrauded by Teresa Edwards and Michael Carter. And Sandra Roberts has been my investigator for 4 months. Investigator? The word slammed into me. Sandra wasn't betraying me. She wasn't scamming me. She was working undercover, but if that was true, why hadn't she told me? Inside Michael's office, detectives swarmed. Sandra sat across from them, explaining with calm precision how she'd documented Teresa's fraudulent scheme, how she'd orchestrated the deck to bait them, how she'd gathered victim testimonies. Meanwhile, I sat in the corner, stunned. My wife wasn't a criminal. She was a licensed private investigator, a black belt martial artist, a woman living an entire second life while I lay awake wondering if she was cheating. Every late-night phone call, every mysterious drive, every lie about working late. They weren't affairs. They were investigations. I should have felt relief. But all I felt was betrayal, because she'd let me believe the worst for months. She'd let me drown in suspicion, in paranoia, in heartbreak, all to protect her cover. Later, when the house quieted and Teresa was led away in cuffs, Sandra finally approached me. "You made me the bait," I whispered. "For 4 months, you let me think you were having an affair. You let me doubt everything just to catch Teresa." Her shoulders sagged. "I wanted to tell you every single day. But victims disappear in these cases, Josh. Witnesses die. If Teresa even suspected you knew, you could have trusted me." I exploded. "Instead, you lied. Every day, every night. You let me think I'd lost my wife?" Sandra's eyes softened with guilt. "I was protecting you. I was trying to trust you. Neither of us had the moral high ground." Outside, I heard Teresa screaming from the back of the squad car. "This isn't over!" she shrieked, her mask of a grieving widow finally stripped away, but her words hardly registered. My world was spinning too fast. For days after, the investigation consumed everything. Detectives needed statements. Lawyers wanted timelines. Victims poured in, grateful for Sandra's work, and me? I sat at home staring at a marriage I no longer recognized. Sandra's secrets were justified, maybe even heroic. But they had poisoned the very foundation we'd built together. How do you forgive someone who lied for the greater good? How do you trust a woman who had a dozen different identities, 6 business cards, and a bank account you never knew existed? I wanted to forgive. I wanted to be proud. But mostly, I felt used. The night of Michael's arraignment, Sandra slipped me a folder. Inside were divorce papers unsigned. Option 1, she said softly. "We end it here." Option 2, counseling. Complete transparency. No more lies. We rebuild. Your choice. I stared at the papers. My throat closed. 12 years of love weighed against 4 months of lies. Which side would win? But before I could decide, the courtroom revealed secrets about Sandra that cut even deeper than the lies she told me. Because the fight against Teresa wasn't over, and the battle for my marriage had only just begun. And what happened inside that courthouse would leave me questioning whether justice was worth the cost of love. The courthouse was buzzing. Reporters, neighbors, even families I'd never met filled the gallery, desperate to witness the takedown of Maple Ridge's darkest secret. I sat in the third row, my hands trembling. On the prosecutor's side sat Sandra. But not my Sandra, the woman in pajamas laughing over late-night ice cream. This Sandra wore a sharp navy suit, her hair pulled tight, her posture rigid. She looked every inch the professional investigator she'd hidden from me all those months. And on the defense side, 2 monsters disguised as neighbors. Teresa Edwards, no longer the grieving widow, but a predator who'd turned HOA bylaws into a weapon. Beside her sat Michael Carter, the friendly contractor who'd once built my deck with a smile, now shackled in orange. When the judge entered, silence fell. The gavel cracked. The trial began. Michael's lawyer moved first. Your Honor, my client wishes to cooperate fully. He will testify against Teresa Edwards in exchange for reduced sentencing. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Michael nodded solemnly, hands folded like a repentant child. But when he spoke, his words painted Teresa as the mastermind, the architect of every scheme. She identified the homes, Michael explained. Always corner lots, always families struggling financially. I created violations. She pressured them to sell. We bought cheap, flipped for profit. 6 houses in 2 years. Almost $2 million gained. $2 million! My $8,000 deck was nothing compared to the empire they'd built. Then came the victims. The Rodriguez family told how they lost their garage to safety codes, forced to sell at a loss. The Patel family recounted how medical bills and fines crushed them until they gave up their home. The Kowalskis described bankruptcy after a series of citations for non-compliant fencing. Every story bled grief into the room. And at the center of it all sat Teresa, expressionless, cold, untouched by their tears. When it was Sandra's turn to testify, the gallery hushed. Attorney Walker introduced her not as my wife, but as Investigator Roberts. Sandra walked to the stand, heels clicking, calm as a soldier in enemy territory. She swore her oath, then locked eyes with the prosecutor. I was hired to investigate reports of HOA harassment, she said. Patterns of fraudulent violations, all tied to the same contractor and HOA president. Standard procedure required undercover infiltration. I established cover identities. I allowed Teresa and Michael to target me and my family. Every step was documented. The prosecutor smiled. And what did you discover, Investigator Roberts? Sandra's voice never wavered. That Teresa Edwards and Michael Carter coordinated a scheme to defraud families out of their homes. That Michael knowingly built to false specifications, then Teresa filed fraudulent violations. That together, they profited from forced sales. The room leaned forward, hanging on every word. But then Teresa's lawyer pounced. Isn't it true, Ms. Roberts, that you deceived your own husband during this investigation? The air left my lungs. All eyes shifted to me, then back to her. Sandra's jaw tightened. I maintained cover to protect the integrity of the investigation, the lawyer smirked. So you lied to your husband for months. You manipulated him into hiring Mr. Carter, orchestrated scenarios that put him at risk, let him believe you were unfaithful. That standard procedure? Sandra's knuckles whitened against the stand. My personal life has no bearing on the evidence, but it did. Everyone could see it. The whispers grew louder, sympathy shifting, not just for victims, but for me. The lawyer pressed harder. How many families did you deceive this way? How many spouses did you manipulate, letting them believe their partners were liars or cheaters? Sandra shot back. I documented crimes already in progress. Teresa Edwards preyed on families long before I arrived. My work exposed her. My work stopped her. The gavel slammed. The judge demanded order. But the damage was done. Sandra had told the truth. But so had the lawyer. She had lied. She had manipulated me. And though it was for justice, the scars it left on our marriage were real. When court recessed, Patricia Wilson shuffled over, patting my arm. She's a good woman, Josh. Saved this neighborhood. Don't forget that when you're angry. Easy for her to say. She hadn't woken at 2 a.m. to an empty bed. The trial resumed with sentencing arguments. The judge looked straight at Teresa. You perverted the concept of community. You destroyed lives for greed. 5 years in county jail. Restitution of $480,000. Permanent ban from HOA leadership. Finally, Teresa broke character. This isn't over! She shrieked, thrashing as bailiffs dragged her away. Her eyes found mine. Your wife's smarter than you. Smarter than all of us. Don't forget it. Michael, meanwhile, was granted 3 years with cooperation credit. Not the architect, the judge said, but a willing participant. The fake cops got probation, their stupidity excused as ignorance. As the courtroom emptied, Walker approached with plans for civil suits, restitution, damages, money to cover the deck, money for emotional distress. But what money could rebuild trust? Sandra appeared beside me, her armor cracking. Can we talk, please? We slipped into an empty conference room. For a long moment, silence. Then she said, I'm leaving the investigation business. After this case, I'm done. Walker offered me consulting. Desk work, training investigators in ethics. No more undercover, no more lies, just a normal job. She was offering to change for me, for us, and I should have been relieved, but the words that spilled out weren't gratitude. They were guilt. The cameras, I said softly. I installed them because I didn't trust you. Because I believed the worst. Sandra's eyes watered. And I lied because I didn't trust you with the truth. 2 wounds, different blades, same cut. She pulled a manila folder from her bag. Divorce papers. My chest caved. Option 1, she whispered. We end it here. Option 2, counseling. No secrets, no lies. We rebuild. I stared at her. My wife, my stranger, my savior, my betrayer. Which choice was mine? But before I could sign those papers, another revelation about Sandra shattered me all over, again. Because even heroes carry secrets, and her next one made me question whether we could ever rebuild. And the decision I faced wasn't just about love, it was about survival. Justice doesn't always roar into your life. Sometimes it limps in, dragging chains of betrayal, forcing you to decide whether truth feels like victory or just another wound. The courtroom smelled of sweat, perfume, and stale coffee. Reporters scribbled notes. Victims clutched tissues. And there, shackled in orange, sat Teresa Edwards, the woman who'd once waved at me over the fence like a kind neighbor. The judge's words echoed like hammer strikes. You perverted the concept of community. You preyed on families, destroyed lives, and lined your pockets. This court finds your actions reprehensible. 5 years. That was her sentence. 5 years behind bars, restitution, and a permanent ban from any HOA leadership. It wasn't enough for the families she'd destroyed, but it was something. A piece of karma finally delivered. Teresa didn't flinch. Her mask of grief, her widow act, was gone. She turned to Sandra as bailiffs cuffed her wrists. This isn't over, she hissed. You think prison will stop me? I'll appeal. I'll outlast you. Sandra didn't blink. She just stared, calm, professional, the way I had never seen her before all of this. Michael's turn came next. His testimony had been damning, his cooperation essential, but that didn't absolve him. Not the architect, the judge declared, but a willing participant who profited from suffering. 3 years. Reduced sentence for cooperation. Michael slumped, his contractor's charm stripped away, leaving only a hollow man who'd traded decency for profit. The fake cops, Tony and Rick, were given probation and community service. They'd been stupid, not malicious, tricked into thinking they were acting in some bizarre prank. Still, fraud was fraud. Justice, in its fractured way, was served. But as the gavel cracked and the courtroom emptied, I felt no triumph. Instead, I felt hollow. Sandra appeared beside me, exhaustion etched into her face. Her sharp suit couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, or the way her hand trembled when she reached for mine. "Can we talk?" she whispered. We slipped into a conference room. The silence between us was heavier than any sentence handed down. Finally, she spoke. "I'm done, Josh. No more undercover work." David offered me consulting, desk hours, training, reform. No more lies. No more sneaking out. Just a normal life, if you'll have me. Her words should have soothed me. They should have been enough, but instead I confessed. "I installed cameras. I checked your mileage. I dug through your car because I didn't trust you." Sandra closed her eyes. "And I lied every day because I didn't trust you with the truth. 2 wounds. Different blades. Same scar." She slid a manila folder across the table. "Divorce papers." My breath caught. "Option 1, she said softly. "We end it here. Option 2, counseling, transparency, rebuilding, your choice." I stared at her, my wife, my stranger, my betrayer, my savior. 12 years of marriage balanced on the edge of one decision. The civil suit followed weeks later. David Walker and his team tore through Teresa's finances, exposing shell companies, hidden accounts, fraudulent deeds. Her properties were seized, assets liquidated. Victims received restitution, damages, closure. When my turn came, David placed a check in my hand. $87,000, enough to cover the deck, the fines, the emotional wreckage, but no amount of money could rebuild trust. Sandra and I entered counseling. Dr. Morrison's office smelled of lavender and leather-bound books. She looked at us like puzzle pieces she'd seen 100 times before. "Why are you here?" she asked. Sandra. "Because I lied to my husband for 4 months. Me. Because my wife made me bait in a criminal case." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "You're clear on each other's faults. What about your own?" That silenced us. For 6 weeks, we dragged our wounds into that office. We role-played hard conversations, wrote unsent letters, practiced standing in each other's shoes. Sandra admitted she'd known about the deck weeks before, had pretended surprise, had felt guilty every day since. I admitted I'd nearly filed for divorce 3 times. Papers in my car, pride stopping me from confessing I still loved her. Progress came slowly, like watching grass grow through cracks in concrete. I moved back into the house after 2 months of separation, into the guest room first. We cooked awkward dinners, talked about weather instead of wounds, watched TV from opposite sides of the couch, but slowly the distance shrank. We laughed again. Once, when Teresa's prison interview aired on TV, she claimed she was the real victim of entrapment. Sandra snorted. "She hired fake cops." "The audacity," I said. We laughed until tears rolled. For the first time in months, it felt real. The neighborhood transformed, too. Patricia Wilson was elected HOA president, promising transparency, accountability, common sense. She banned secret fines, enforced term limits, even turned the annual HOA meeting into deck day. A BBQ where neighbors checked safety together instead of tearing each other apart. The victims, once scattered and broken, formed a support group. Sandra sometimes attended, not as an investigator but as a survivor. "We all lost something," Mrs. Rodriguez said at one meeting. "But we gained each other." Sandra squeezed her hand. For once, she wasn't the detective. She was just a neighbor. 4 months later, Dr. Morrison gave us homework. Share one secret, one fear, one hope. Sandra admitted, "I kept your anniversary receipt. I knew about the deck early. Pretended surprise. Used it for the investigation. I've felt guilty since." I admitted, "I almost filed for divorce. Pride stopped me. But I still loved you." That night, I moved my pillows back into our bedroom. No dramatic speeches, no vows, just clean sheets and hours of late-night talking. 6 months after the fake cops, we celebrated our anniversary for real. At a fancy Italian restaurant downtown. To survival, Sandra toasted. To rebuilding, I countered. Our glasses clinked. For once, both promises felt true. The civil trial ended in our favor. Teresa's empire dismantled. Victims received restitution. My share, $87,000, went into our joint account, a gesture of faith. Progress meant forgiveness without forgetting, choosing each other even when it hurt. But we weren't perfect. We still fought. Old wounds still bled. Sandra still scanned exits at restaurants, instincts she couldn't shut off. I still twitched when she came home late. Dr. Morrison had warned us. Healing isn't linear. You'll have setbacks. But the goal isn't perfection, it's choosing each other anyway. 1 year after the fake cops, we hosted a neighborhood BBQ. The Rodriguez family brought salsa. The Johnsons reunited. The Patel's son, once crushed under bills, ran around healthy and laughing. Sandra stood on our deck, the deck that had started it all. Last year, she told the crowd, I thought justice and marriage were separate battles. I was wrong. Real justice is creating good out of terrible, building community out of chaos. That's what we've done. Together, applause shook the night. For once, it wasn't about lies or suspicion. It was about survival. And for the first time, I believed we might just make it. But even as we rebuilt, the question haunted me. Was Sandra really done with her secret life? Because when the next temptation arrived, she had to choose between justice and us all over again. And the final decision she made would determine whether our marriage truly survived, or finally shattered for good. The sun dipped low over Maple Ridge, painting the neighborhood gold. The same neighborhood that once felt like a prison of fines and threats now buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of barbecue. I leaned against the railing of the deck, the infamous deck. The one that sparked violations, betrayals, investigations, and nearly destroyed my marriage. Now, kids darted across it chasing balloons. Neighbors swapped recipes. Mrs. Wilson, the new HOA president, laughed so hard her potato salad almost tipped. The very thing meant to break us had somehow become the foundation of something stronger. Sandra stood beside me. Hair loose, dressed casual, no disguises, no briefcase full of secrets. Just her, my wife. The woman who nearly lost me, and whom I nearly lost because truth had been buried beneath layers of lies and necessity. Think we'll ever tell Emma the whole story? She asked, nodding toward our granddaughter. About the fake cops? The midnight stakeouts? Almost divorcing? I chuckled. Maybe when she's older. For now, let her think Grandma's just the cool detective. Sandra smiled, but there was a fragility in her eyes. She was still learning to live without the adrenaline of undercover life, still learning to be just. Herself. And I was still learning to trust her again. Healing isn't neat. It isn't a straight line. It's jagged, messy, filled with setbacks. We still argued. We still stumbled. But we kept choosing each other one day at a time. The deck creaked under Mrs. Wilson's gavel as she tapped her glass. "Official HOA business," she announced, raising a toast. "We're renaming the community garden the Roberts Memorial Garden." Sandra nearly spit out her drink. "We're not dead." "Close enough," Wilson winked. "You saved the neighborhood. Deal with it." Laughter rippled through the crowd, warm and genuine. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Later, as the night quieted, Sandra and I sat side by side, watching the embers die down. "Happy anniversary," she whispered. "Our real one's months away," I reminded her. "Every day we stay," she said softly, "is an anniversary now." I nodded, fingers entwining with hers. Happy anniversary. The deck held strong beneath us. So did we. And that's the story of a deck that became a battlefield, of neighbors turned predators, of a wife living a secret life, of betrayal, justice, survival, and second chances. Most of all, it's the story of how truth finally came to light in Maple Ridge. But here's the thing. This isn't just my story. HOAs across the country have pulled the same tricks. Phony violations, bullying families, pushing people out of homes they love. Maybe not always with fake cops and staged deaths, but with the same cruelty. Quiet schemes that ruin lives behind the mask of community. So if you've ever wondered, am I the only one going through this? You're not. That's why I share these stories here, because every family deserves to know the truth about what's really happening behind those HOA meeting doors, and because sometimes the people closest to us are the biggest mysteries of all. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, imagine how many other HOA secrets are waiting to be exposed. Hit like if you believe families deserve justice over HOA greed. Click subscribe and join our community here on HOA Truth Tales. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss another unbelievable true story of neighborhoods, betrayals, and the fight for truth. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we uncover the truth. Until next time, stay alert, stay strong, and always remember, sometimes the smallest violation hides the biggest conspiracy.